watched Nintendo, man, my thumbs were always sore. We stayed up past midnight, beating every score. Now I'm almost 21, playing evermore.
All right, welcome listeners to another fascinating episode of Beaveman and the Doc. I, as always, am the Beaveman.
Still the Doc.
And with us today, we have a special guest star. What we're going to do this week, I'm very excited about it because if I could sit around and do what I want to do whenever I want to do it, I'd probably read comics and watch animated comics and live action comics on TV most of the day. Because, I would like to just nerd out at all times most of the time.
Actually, I as much as I like comics, I think Hugh Hefner had a better gig going on.
Well,
Just saying.
I guess, if you want to say it that way. But I personally...
If I could do whatever I wanted all day, every day.
Well, I personally would rather just read comics and somehow stay naturally buff. That would be awesome. And be able to eat whatever I want to do. This is my fantasy, so that's what I would like to do. It's far more interesting for me to read comics than to read all the medical bullshit that I have to read all the time. And by the way, Beavemanites and Docutrons, if you hear some children screaming in the background, it's because I'm living in a town in Arizona, a small one, and it's sunny outside, and they have a garage sale next door, and they won't shut the fuck up. But that is their right. So, a special guest star today. He does the intro and outro tracks for Beaveman and the Doc, and he is would you say a self-proclaimed comic book expert, Skylar?
I'd say something like that. I do spend a lot of time watching the comic book movies. I don't read comics as much anymore, but I still keep up to date with most of that stuff.
And you're pretty well in tune to whenever a new movie, new trailer, or anything is coming out.
Yeah, down to like a lot of the Endgame trailer, like the new Avengers trailer that just dropped. Most of the time when it's pretty predictable, I can tell somehow along those lines when they'll come out, or like if they're teasing them. I usually keep up to date on all that news.
So we brought you in for a very specific reason. The reason being that, I don't know Doc. I don't know his preference for comics, if he has a preference for comics, but I'm a DC person. How about you, Doc?
For the longest time, I didn't even know the difference between Marvel and DC. Superheroes were superheroes.
Oh, okay. Well,
But,
that's pretty fair. So you had your favorites. Who were your favorites then?
Superman.
Shut up. No, okay, that's fine.
Yes, Spider-Man.
Superman, Spider-Man. Who else? Anybody?
Wolverine.
Okay.
Yeah, as far as the X-Men goes, I always had a bad temper, so my brother always used to make jokes saying that I would make a good Wolverine.
Well, I mean, I guess a blonde Wolverine. That's kind of...
Blonde? I'm not blonde.
Well, you don't have black hair. You can't grow no dark black chops, but I guess.
Hey,
I mean,
it's
I guess
all
I could say
turning
that.
gray, man. It's...
Well, see, I knew there was a difference between DC and Marvel growing up, but I had my favorites on both sides. I will say that I think that DC, and maybe people will get pissed at me about this, but I really don't care because this is my podcast and I will do whatever I want. Of course, I grew up liking Superman also, and Batman. So I grew up liking those two. But from the Marvel world, of course, I loved Spider-Man and I liked the Hulk a lot. So those were my biggies. I did feel, however, that DC only had really going for them. They really only had a couple things going. And I like Green Lantern. So those were my favorites. But I really didn't feel that the rest of their characters were as strong as the Marvel universe. I felt that Marvel had way more cool characters than DC. DC had the top characters in my mind, except for Spider-Man, but they didn't have the range that Marvel has.
I think to me the biggest difference between Marvel and DC is that DC has cooler abilities. Their superhero abilities are more ideally packaged so they can be challenged properly in the story. But in Marvel, I think the alternate identity or the alter ego of the superhero is better developed. So they have more personal life in the Marvel universe than they do in the DC.
Okay. Well, Skylar, then let's see. Let's delve into your background. Then, being the youngest member here and growing up specifically with you, you kind of grew up in a renaissance of comics and comic book superheroes. So,
Right.
so who's your favorite? What's your background there?
Uh, well, one of the earliest memories that I have is earliest memories with superheroes and earliest memories with movies is when we went to go see the original Spider-Man in 2002. That was probably, you would know it, but that's like the first recollection I have of associating with superheroes at all is that movie from 2002 by Sam Raimi.
Okay. And from that time on, you were pretty well influenced, obviously, by Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man is my favorite. Uh, Go in some kind of order. It's Spider-Man and Batman are the top two. Batman is kind of, I love the detective angle of Batman. Spider-Man doesn't really solve crimes. He just kind of goes in swinging and science, but I like the mystery detective aspect of Batman.
Right. Well, yeah, I do too, because Batman is not a superhero. He is a proclaimed not a superhero. He is a
Right.
detective. So that's very cool. Even though everybody calls him a superhero and they begged him to be in the Justice League, blah blah blah, he's not a superhero. But no, yeah. If obviously, and I've said this before for the listeners that haven't listened to us before, Skylar, who does the intro and outro tracks, is my son. So I try to influence. I don't think I had to work very much to get him influenced by all the cool superheroes and everything. And I think Skylar's probably been wearing a Spider-Man costume up until the age of, well, he might have one now. I don't even know.
It doesn't fit very well. It's a little bit big.
Oh, it's a little bit big, but he's had one ever since probably the age of three, 3 or 4, whenever the first movie came out. Yeah, you've had one ever since then. So he's had quite a few of them. So he's got the interest in the Marvel. Our big question, and Doc and I were talking about it, is when Captain Marvel came out recently, and I've seen that movie. I've seen it twice. What were your thoughts on that movie, Doc?
Well, I remember Captain Marvel being Billy Batson, and Shazam was the word he would say to transform into Captain Marvel. But with all the legal troubles and disputes that they had between DC and Marvel over who gets the name Captain Marvel, uh, somehow that got split up. So now there's the superhero actually named Shazam versus another superhero named Captain Marvel.
So did you know? So when the previews came out for Captain Marvel for this movie that is Captain Marvel by Marvel Studios, obviously, did you know that it was Marvel Studios? Had you not seen the previews? Did you think it was going to be Captain Marvel from DC?
No, no, I knew there was a difference, but it's it's Marvel's way of just trying to stake a claim or stake additional claim to the title Marvel.
So now, okay, so I thought along the same lines as Doc. Not I knew that there was a Captain Marvel in the Marvel universe, but Captain Marvel in my mind, when people say Captain Marvel, they're talking about the guy who is now known as Shazam since 2011. Okay, so what's the actual I guess would you say growth or the lineage or the history here of Captain Marvel as you understand it, Skylar?
So basically, when Shazam was called Captain Marvel, that was in the 1940s, was when he started appearing in books, kind of as a Superman-esque figure. And he was making comics way back then as Detective Comics before Marvel even had a name as Marvel. They used to be Timely Comics, and they weren't that much in a rivalship. But DC was putting out Shazam comics. They called him Captain Marvel originally, and then some point the comics were being, it's a very complicated history. So Shazam, or Captain Marvel, it's so confusing. Captain Marvel was owned by this company called Fawcett Comics, and they published him originally And eventually DC saw what they were doing with him, and they kind of licensed it out, kind of like franchising a bit. So DC started publishing Captain Marvel comics under Captain Marvel, and eventually Fawcett kind of ran out of money, and the Captain Marvel comics went away, and Captain Marvel that's out now, that has the movie with Brie Larson that just came out, is based on a character called Miss Marvel, and she was pretty popular in the 70s. And what Marvel Comics did was they snatched up the Captain Marvel name after DC let that kind of license lapse. So it's this really weird back and forth where there's 3 different comic companies involved. Licensing deals and trademark expirations kind of ultimately led to this really big pop culture confusion. But yeah, it's a really interesting story because it involved, back in the day there were a lot more comic book publishers trying to copy Superman, and that's kind of how current day Shazam turned out to be. Was he was kind of like a foil to Superman.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting concept because Superman's first appearance was in Action Comics in issue 1 in 1938. So Captain Marvel's appearance was in 1940 in Whiz Comics.
Right.
And issue number 2, and then stayed out from there on, and then the eventual evolution. And I don't even know who. It's just like Superman. Superman evolved over time. Like his powers actually evolved over time.
Actually, Superman, I believe, started right around 1938.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Was the first? Oh, did you say that?
Yeah, pay attention. God, you were just waiting to fucking say that. You were waiting to you were like, actually, here's my doc voice. Actually, Beaveman, Superman's first appearance was in 1938, I believe. Where'd you hear that? Maybe 2 seconds ago when I fucking said it. So here's what's really
say. It's not plagiarism, it's stealing. I stole your idea.
No, here's the funny thing though, is when you the great thing is, for my birthday, my family got me the DC Universe app. So the DC Universe app is great because it doesn't have all the comics in it, but it does have, they've put is quite a bit in there. So I was able to read some of the Action Comics with Superman in them, and I did find the Captain Marvel ones also, but there's only a couple of them in there. They don't have all of them. Here's what's really confusing is when you look at it, is it Action Comics, is it Whiz Comics, were they owned by DC? I know when the appearance of, like, when Batman first appeared in, I think he appeared in 39 or 40. I think he was in Action Comics, but that was, Action Comics was owned by DC, I think, if I'm not 100% sure on that. So it's like they were waiting to, like, when are we actually going to unleash the actual name of the comic itself and then call the comics by the comic book characters instead of things like Action Comics or Whiz Comics or, Detective Comics, etc. But yeah, that was the first appearance, was 1938 of Superman. 1940 was Captain Marvel in that Whiz Comics.
Batman was 1939.
Yeah, I had heard that somewhere too. I said it was either 39 or 40.
Yeah. Created by Bob Kane. Writer is Bill Finger.
Well, we can get into that one too, but on a different episode. So there's the evolution there of. So you're right. They were trying to create some sort of a Superman-esque hero, but they have different powers. But they are on par with each other.
Basically, what everybody in the 40s, late 30s was trying to do was create their own Superman.
Right. So when you're talking about that, there was a time frame when basically Captain Marvel went away. So do you think that was a popularity thing during that time? So we're talking about now known as Shazam, I guess. So he disappeared, I think, from around the 50s. Something like in 53 or something like that. He disappeared and didn't show up again until the 70s.
Yeah, so what I have here is it's from 1941 to 53. Fawcett and DC were kind of going back and forth with legal battles, and I'm pretty sure Fawcett lost that lawsuit, and I could be wrong. It could be DC. I mean, it's a 50-50 chance.
Right.
But there were a lot of lawsuits going on behind the scenes because Shazam became so popular that basically the licensing deal, it called for more money is what Fawcett wanted, and they weren't doing too hot. So basically after all that trouble, DC decided it wasn't really worth it to keep everything going, and there's like this dark period. I think there's like a dark period basically where throughout the 1960s and up to the 70s he's kind of there but also kind of in the background more, not so much as like a mainstay character.
And I think what they did was they actually explained it away later on in the other comics, like they got trapped in time, the entire Marvel family, in like some sort of alternate reality or some crap like that, along with the bad guys that he was always fighting. But the 70s was a good time for resurgence, though, because Doc and I both remember the live action show. You remember that, right?
What was it? 1974 was season 1 of Shazam.
But even then, still, we were calling him Captain Marvel, but the name of the show was Shazam, and he was Captain Marvel.
Because, Shazam was the word that he would say that would trigger his power.
And by the way, do you guys know what Shazam stands for?
I do not.
You know, Doc?
Not a clue.
All right, so Shazam is, what was that, an acronym? So the S is for the wisdom of Solomon. H is the strength of Hercules. A is the stamina of Atlas. Z is the power of Zeus. A is the courage of Achilles. And M is the speed of Mercury. Yeah. So when you and I were talking about...
That explains why he gets struck by lightning when he changes.
Yeah, well, I reckon so. But he's evolved over time also. So, but what about the evolution of on the Marvel spectrum though, Sky? Because Captain Marvel hasn't always been Captain Marvel.
Right. So Captain Marvel, the modern day Captain Marvel that we have now is Carol Danvers. That's the woman version that we have. But back around the time of the 60s, when trademarks and things started to go a little bit off the rails, we had another Captain Marvel, which was a Kree soldier named Marvel, and he had really different powers. There wasn't really anything similar to the characters except in name and kind of lapsed over trademark things, but he's basically an alien that gets these powers from the planet that he's protecting, and at some point throughout the comics history, he starts dating Carol Danvers, who lives on Earth and is just a normal human being. And eventually, since they're together so much, eventually an accident happens where, kind of like similar how in the movie Carol gets her powers, there's a big accident and an explosion, and Marvel's powers transfer over to Carol Danvers, and she becomes Miss Marvel. So you have the male Captain Marvel, and you have Carol Danvers, who went by Miss Marvel. And eventually, sadly, Captain Marvel dies very randomly of cancer in the comics. It's a very odd event, but it was the first instance of a superhero dying from a regular human disease, I'm pretty sure. So then after Captain Marvel died, which was that was an 80s comic book event, then Miss Marvel took up the name of Captain Marvel a little bit later on down the line. So that's how we get to where we are now, where Carol Danvers owns the Captain Marvel moniker.
But she's been different superheroes, though, too, right?
Yeah, she's been a few different things.
Okay.
Something interesting.
This isn't about Ben Franklin, is it? Because if you bring up Benjamin Franklin again, I swear.
No, Ben Franklin is awesome. But no, it's not about Ben Franklin.
This is not about... this is not...
DC has a newer series called Supergirl. I guess it's not that new, but
no, it's been
the female spin-off rendition of Superman.
Right.
And interestingly enough, her character name is Kara Danvers. Kara, not Carol. Kara.
Yeah, it gets a little bit infuriating to see how much there's a similarity between DC and Marvel. It's almost like car companies. It's almost like if we're going to come up with car companies, they say, if they're going to do a new model, the other car companies get to see what that model is, and you'll see that the models are very similar when they come out. It's almost like the same thing with the comics. It's like somebody's working. It's almost like there's espionage between the two. So when you're talking about Superman has Supergirl, he's got the dog who is what was the Crypto?
Crypto.
Yeah,
Crypto.
Kryptonian dog.
Okay, so if you look at Shazam, Shazam has been, or Captain Marvel has been a family basically since he came out. There's been
Yeah.
Mary Marvel and Marvel Jr. And Marvel Jr. actually becomes Shazam for a period of time in the 80s. And Billy Batson isn't Shazam. He actually loses his power. So it's yeah, you'll see that where they've got a super family, and quite honestly, I'm not a fan of the Marvel family. I'd rather just have Captain Marvel personally. Not interested in seeing Mary Marvel and Captain Marvel Jr. And I don't think they had a dog, but they had a tiger named Tawny Tiger. So not interested in all that. Just want to see Captain Marvel by himself. Okay, so let's look at the movie though, the Captain Marvel movie that is out now, which is Captain Marvel, and Shazam will not be Captain Marvel anymore as of 2011, according to
Right.
So we
Well,
can't
it's
look. You can't call him Captain Marvel, so
it's
stop it.
debatable because maybe you can't now, but there are a whole new set of lawsuits between the release of Captain Marvel and Shazam, and I believe that the whole naming convention between Kara Danvers and Carol Danvers, I think there's new lawsuits out
Well, that's what I'm
as a
saying.
result of those
This
things.
is all that it's like comic espionage or
Yeah,
something.
there's a lot of bad blood, especially between the really weird parts of the fan bases where they don't want to call the new Shazam Shazam. They want to call him Captain Marvel, and then they don't like Captain Marvel being Captain Marvel. It's very reminiscent of the 80s when the comic book industry was just so filled with everybody trying to get in their stories that everything is so similar and almost exactly the same.
Right, and it's not uncommon, at least nowadays, and I don't know how it was back in the day. Back in the day, obviously, if you were a writer, you might have stayed with one company your entire career, but it's not like that now. You can, maybe you'll write for Dark Horse Comics, or maybe you'll write for a TV series, or you might write for DC, or
Yeah,
whatever.
they
Wasn't
jump
there
around.
You see that
Wasn't
all
there
the
a
time.
time when Marvel and DC actually traded certain characters?
There's been crossovers. There's crossovers of universes where you'll see, you might see, what was it, Wolverine fight Batman. They get special permission to do those things, obviously, legally. You can't just
Well,
go
I
write
was
that
thinking
comic.
for some reason that Green Lantern at one time was owned by Marvel. Maybe just my imagination, but
There's a few different, like in the 80s and 90s, Marvel and DC, comics wise, they were kind of trading characters between plot lines to set up this really big comic book event called DC versus Marvel, and that happened in the late 90s. So that's where you see like Spider-Man fighting the Joker and Wolverine and Lobo and all these different characters, and it's really weird because you would see like the comic book characters from DC in the Marvel comics or the Marvel comics characters in DC because I think they both published them individually to make one really big event.
Which I actually like. I actually like to see some crossover stuff because I'd really like, and I don't know if they made this comic or not, but I'd really like to see the Hulk beat the shit out of Superman. I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah, that was one of the issues that they had was Superman versus Hulk.
Well,
I think they screwed up Hulk, especially in the Avengers movie.
oh
And
well, yeah. I mean,
I'm
the
pretty
Hulk.
sure I mentioned it before. The more angry the Hulk becomes, the more unstoppable he becomes. So you can't beat him by pissing him off. You have to calm him down. It's the
Well,
only
I
way
don't
to beat
know
the Hulk.
how. Yeah, I don't. I agree. I don't know how they've made, but they have to do it, I guess, cinematically to. They don't care. I think that when they make these movies, they don't. It's not that they don't care, but they're trying to reach a larger audience. So if they were trying to write the characters exactly as the comic book geeks and nerds understand the character, then they might not have that good of a movie. They're trying to appeal to a larger audience. Where for me, I mean, obviously, I don't know everything about the Hulk. I know very little. I mean, I've just read stuff when I was a kid, and I read Planet Hulk and stuff like that. And to me, not knowing much about Thanos, I naturally think that the Hulk should have been able to beat the shit out of Thanos, but maybe
Right.
but he didn't. He got the tar beat out of him by Thanos. So
Yeah, well, it's always interesting because after the fact, Infinity War especially, I read so many articles about the directors talking because I like those specific directors that work with Marvel, and a lot of people gave him crap because Thanos beat the Hulk, and everybody was like, well, maybe Thanos was using Infinity Stones to beat the Hulk. And then the Russos came out and said that that's not the case. And people make so many theories and they go back and forth, but when you make the movie, you can basically say or do whatever you want. That's kind of how they're working with it. But the thing with the Hulk and Thanos fight, because it seems so obvious that the Hulk would win, they're trying to stay true to the characters, but it's also weird how they change the characters to fit the narrative and add more character development.
Well, even the size, like at times in some of the other movies, Hulk seems a lot bigger than he is in some of the others. He's huge, and in some of the, just like the independent Hulk movies, the Hulk was gigantic. And now you put him in Avengers, and maybe the first ones he was bigger, but now in that last movie he was not very big.
He wasn't. Thanos is a decently big figure, but if you look at him compared to the rest of the Avengers, he's not that big, and Hulk was as big as Thanos was in Infinity War.
Yeah, so they change it, just like we said, and even when you watch, I just rented, because it came out this Tuesday, probably maybe my most favorite animated movie of all time. I don't know, it's pretty up there. They just did the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. One of the things that confuses me is how some of the movies this is a prime example with Spider-Man, is they make him weaker than he is in the comics. Spider-Man is supposed to be able to go toe-to-toe with the Hulk.
Yeah, in the comics he's incredibly strong, and they portray that a lot, but in the movies there's always different weird, interesting things in the movies. Like, in some of the movies, I don't think in any of the live-action movies there's this joke where you never see Spider-Man throw an actual punch, because they just don't feel like showing what his power is like that. So it's always these weird things where they kind of dumb down his powers for some odd reason. Like, even if you compare Captain America Civil War, where Tom Holland is Spider-Man for the first time in the Marvel Universe, he catches like this really big transport beam that they have at the airport. And then in Homecoming, he's insanely weak. Like, he's not very strong in that movie at all, and it doesn't add up.
No, the inconsistencies between the movie. I don't know if they're trying to make them more human or what they're trying to do, but it's very frustrating when you kind of grow up with it and then you see what they do. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy the movies. It's just you get aggravated.
I think what they're trying to do is to make room for improvement. That way, when they make future movies, kind of like they did with Iron Man, he got more powerful as he developed his technology.
Fuck Iron Man.
Tom Holland's character is very young, so the idea being that eventually in like the next Spider-Man movie, maybe he'll discover a way to make himself stronger. You know what I mean?
Right.
To better match what we've seen in the comic books.
Well, if that was part of the Q&A, if that was when they talk with the people who developed the movies and you said, well, look at the evolution of comics from the beginning. Kind of, if you took Superman as an example and said, well, look at Superman when he first came out. He didn't have quite the powers that he has now. That's from an evolutionary standpoint. But when you're flooded with this many comics and this much exposure now, when you have enough people we grew up with this stuff, wanting to have real superhero movies. And now when you get it and you're like, well, why didn't they actually show his real power? And I think they're just trying to appeal to a larger audience that doesn't know anything about it. If you take my wife, she doesn't know shit about the comics, but she'll go to see a movie, and that's her exposure to those heroes. So she doesn't know any better. It's just an entertainment value for her, and that's probably the majority of the population when you think about it. So they're not just appealing to the comic book nerds.
Yeah, it takes a wide audience to push those movies past the $2 billion, and the studios ultimately, they trust the directors and the writers and the producers to give a somewhat accurate portrayal, but obviously when it comes to Disney, all those guys have final say.
Right. And you still have to, we like to think that they're making a movie that they want to make, but the bottom line is they're still making a movie that the producers have to approve. They still have to make the producers happy, I guess.
I blame Disney.
Oh, shut up. You've got something against Disney. You got something against, and we're not going to talk about Star Wars right now. We'll talk about
Disney
that some other
ruins
day.
everything.
Fuck you. You're wrong. You shut the fuck up.
It's good when it comes to superheroes, though, because Disney had so much influence over the Marvel Cinematic Universe at first, but they have their own guy, Kevin Feige, who eventually Disney CEO, Bob Iger, he threw all the guys out that were making the Marvel movies trash, and he just lets Kevin Feige does whatever he wants now, unrestricted. But
Yeah,
they
I
don't
mean-
do that with Star Wars.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
but if you
one
look
nice
at
thing
yeah.
about having Disney involved is the near bottomless pocketbook that they've got to make these things.
Well, and they're
probably
genius.
wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Right, and they're genius because what do they do with their theme parks? There'll be Marvel stuff at their theme parks.
Yeah, they're creating a whole new Marvel land for California that's
Which is
replacing
gonna
like
be-
5 different things.
That's going to be freaking amazing. I mean, I can't wait for that stuff.
Except for their Star Wars cantina, which totally ruined Star Wars.
Well, there was already a Star Wars cantina, you know. There's already a Scum and
Yeah, but it
Villainies
wasn't owned
cantina.
by Disney.
No, but it's an actual bar, and that's where Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin do their Fat Man Beyond podcast. Is at the Scum and Villainies Cantina in Hollywood, I believe.
Hey, they've also got a place it's called the Hobbit House. My wife was telling me about it, and they hire all these midgets, and it's literally a Middle-earth setting.
Do they all have hairy feet?
You know what? I don't know.
Well, they wouldn't be hobbits if we didn't
But
see their
if they
feet.
did, it would be funny as hell.
Well, yeah, I'm sure they probably do. So let me
They have
ask a
hairy
question. Let me ask a question about my questions I had from Captain Marvel, from the movie Captain Marvel, and see what you guys think. Here was my biggest question I came from that movie. Where the fuck did the Tesseract come from if it was supposed to be in the ocean with Captain America? And we didn't find Captain America until... When did we find Captain America? By the timeline?
I think it was 2011.
Okay, so... And so this took place... Captain Marvel took place in what, 89? This most recent movie?
96, I think.
Oh, it took place in 96? Oh, so she disappeared in 89. Is that what it was?
Yeah, so she was gone for 6 years, so I think it took place in 95. She disappeared in 89, and then she came back to Earth in 95.
Okay, so basically still, though, where did the Tesseract come from? If we didn't find Captain America, how is it in two different places? Because that's where the Tesseract holds the Infinity Stone.
Right. Basically going back...
Did you get that? Did you understand that, Doc, when you saw the
Yeah.
movie? Did you wonder where the Tesseract came from?
I didn't think of it at the time, but now that you mention it, that's a really good question.
God, Doc, pay attention, Jesus!
No, I have an answer for it. So the
This better be a
Tesseract
good
has-
answer because that was the most confusing thing for me.
Yeah, the Tesseract is a very confusing timeline. But basically what it is Odin was in charge of the Tesseract way back, hundreds of thousands of years ago, whenever he had it. And he hides it on Earth because humans were primitive when he hid it and wouldn't have the technology to detect that there's an Infinity Stone there. So the first time we see the Tesseract is in Captain America, the First Avenger, the first Captain America movie. That's when the Red Skull is trying to use the Tesseract to create weapons. So that's in 1940-something, like 1941. That's the first time that we see the Tesseract at all. So then, throughout the whole plot of the movie, however long that movie takes place for, all the way up until the plane scene where the Tesseract gets dropped into the ocean, that's how long we know where it is.
Right.
And then Captain America plunges into the Arctic, his plane gets frozen, etc., etc. But they do this kind of subtle thing where you have to have the Tesseract in some kind of holding device, or if you're a certain kind of alien, whatever, like how Thanos held it and crushed it in his hand.
Right. He can actually touch an Infinity Stone, whereas we could not.
Humans can't do that, so that's why every time someone picks it up in those movies, they're wearing gloves or they're holding some kind of device. So Captain America and Red Skull are fighting on the plane that he eventually plunges into the ocean. And the Tesseract falls onto the floor of the plane while they're flying, and it melts like the metal around it and falls into the ocean. So it's not on the plane when Captain America crashes, it's somewhere in the middle of the random ocean. And then, since Captain America is technically government property, his body, Howard Stark was commissioned, and we see this part in the movie. Howard Stark was commissioned to find Captain America, and they used like a underwater submarine robot in the. I think it was either sometime in the late 40s, early 50s, I think. They're searching the entire ocean looking for Captain America, and instead of finding him, they find the Tesseract. So Howard Stark finds it in the ocean sometime between 1940 and 1960 is when they reclaim the Tesseract. They pull it out of the ocean.
Now, the Infinity Stone that's in the Tesseract was the Space Stone?
The Space Stone.
Okay.
So then the Tesseract is in possession of S.H.I.E.L.D. from whenever, say, like 1950, from all the way up until 1990. S.H.I.E.L.D. has the Tesseract because S.H.I.E.L.D. is already an established organization at that point, founded by Peggy Carter and Howard Stark. So they have the Tesseract in their hands. And basically, it goes from the bottom of the ocean to a vault in S.H.I.E.L.D., and then Pegasus, Project Pegasus, which appears in the movie Captain Marvel, the woman, I think her name was like Dr. Leeds or something, the woman that they called
Larson?
Marvel in that movie.
I think Dr. Larson. Is that her name? Larson? Or
Yeah,
Lawson?
Dr. Larson.
Dr. Wendy Lawson.
Lawson.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
which, any of them. This starts with an L. So S.H.I.E.L.D. has the Tesseract in a safe all the way until the 90s when Dr. Lawson starts the Pegasus Project and tries to create Lightspeed as a secret kind of government operative so that she can use that technology to go end the Kree Skrull War. So, using her connections through the Air Force and with S.H.I.E.L.D., they allow her to use the Tesseract, or she steals it. It hasn't been confirmed, whichever one. And she uses that to create the Lightspeed engine, which then Carol Danvers destroyed, which gave her power. So, kind of by like a little bit down the line, Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, gets her powers from the Infinity Stone. But they never show how Dr. Lawson took the Tesseract from S.H.I.E.L.D. to get it to her base up in orbit, up there in space.
Okay, but here's where I got further confused, though, and maybe it's one of those things, you know, how you make stuff up in your own mind. What's that called?
Right.
The Mendelian.
The Mandela effect.
The Mandela effect. I swear that when they found Captain Marvel on on his plane, I swear there was a glowing blue light when they found him, and that inferred that the Tesseract was on the plane.
Oh, you mean Captain America?
Yeah, when they found Captain America.
Yeah, I haven't watched that movie in a while, but I know that they do, like, it's a really fast flashback that he has where I think they do it in the Avengers movie, like the first Avengers movie where he's trying to readjust to the world. They show him getting found. And I think what it is that's his suit, because there's like a lot of flash of blue and red when they find him. And it might be his suit, because the Tesseract, they deliberately show it fell out of the plane into the ocean in the first Captain America movie.
Well, I remember it falling. I remember it melting through the floor, but I didn't remember it going into the ocean. So it'd be interesting to check that, and I want to see that when they're finding him, to see if if I made that up in my head, or if there really was some radiant blue light there when they found him.
I need just a moment of away from the keyboard. I'll be right back. Sorry about that.
Doc has to take a dump. A listening audience, he has explosive diarrhea, and he was telling me about that earlier. And he spent the majority of the time here on the toilet, and he just was really quiet. But apparently now it's gotten to him, and he just can't handle it anymore. So here was my other question about the movie that I found really interesting. And it was perplexing to me when I watched the movie. It was perplexing to me when I watched it the second time. And then I listened to, I can't remember if it was Mark Bernardin solo on his own, kind of talking about Captain Marvel, doing a review on it, or if he was talking about it with Kevin Smith. But it was the same question I had. So if Captain Marvel was on Earth, she crashed on Earth, and she was so far away, and she'd already been taken by the Skrulls, and they were so far away, how is it that Jude Law's character was a really long ways away from Earth and was able to get to us, but they don't have the speed of light? Because the closest galaxy to ours, if I remember science correctly, and this is what happens when you don't really look something up. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the closest galaxy to ours is Alpha Centauri, and
I think so.
it takes any light from Alpha Centauri to reach us is 4 light years. So
Yeah, it's
they're
pretty
obviously
far
not
away.
in Alpha Centauri. So how did they get to us so fast without having the capability of the speed of light? And I know it's the comics, but that's not
Right.
something that they addressed. So what
Yeah, it's
they have spacecraft that's or jump points that's almost as fast as the speed of light or something.
right. They introduced the jump points in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where they kind of. Um, okay, so I do have kind of an answer for that. So in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, they introduced the jump points, which are like the honeycomb things that your ship can jump through to get to different points in space. And Rocket and Groot and the other guys in that movie jump through like 22 of those points. So the way that Captain Marvel is, it's a little confusing because their mission was to take the scrolls. They were trying to kill the scrolls on the planet that we see them infiltrating in the movie, and they're trying to find their spy on that planet. And they have coordinates for every planet, but we obviously don't know where they actually are in relation to us because they're just most likely random numbers. So it's more confusing that somehow Captain Marvel. Oh wait, no, never mind. That's all solved. So Captain Marvel, her ship, Captain Marvel gets abducted by the Skrulls, and when she's flying the escape pod away, the Skrulls were somewhat near Earth, and she crash lands on Earth. But um, her whole entire group that's left behind in part of the Kree Empire, they're all back wherever they were before that the Skrulls aren't even near because they're trying to hide on the other side of whatever galaxy. And they say in the movie that their ship isn't very fast to get to Earth because they realize she's so far away. And they talk about going through jump points and that I don't remember exactly how many light years away they said the jump point is, but they say specifically when Jude Law is trying to ask how fast they can get to Carol Danvers, they say something that the nearest jump point is
Like
so
22
many
hours
light
away.
years away.
Yeah, they said like
Yeah,
I don't even know if he said light years. I think he said something like 22 hours. I think he just said hours if I remember
yeah,
correctly.
Yeah, I
But
think
even
that was the
that part
case.
was confusing because okay, so they were originally on this planet where they started fighting the Skrulls, right? And that's where they were
right,
supposed to pick up the spy. Okay, so again, even the closest galaxy to ours is 4 light years away. Let's say that they're in that galaxy or in that area. Okay.
right,
So the Skrulls had to take her, and it does make sense that they're near Earth because they knew that what they needed was on Earth or on Terra.
right.
So, but they still would have had to take in time to get from that point to that point. So the amount of time that she was in captivity would have had to have been longer than they alluded to in the movie.
It would have had to be a lot longer because they have to travel from this planet that we in our solar system don't even know or recognize to them being pretty much literally right above Earth.
Right. So that was my other inconsistency that it was confusing to me. But again, it's the comics, so they can kind of do whatever. It doesn't have to conform to science in any way,
Right.
shape, or form. I mean, the fact that the Skrulls were holding her in our Earth's somewhere near our Earth's atmosphere, that made sense. But again, I think that the timeline is off. I think that she had to have been missing a lot longer than they alluded to in the movie.
Yeah, they kind of do. They do a good job and a bad job alluding to that because while they're rooting through her memories, you don't know how long that takes or how long they knocked her out or how long she was held captive in that ship. But it had to be a very, very long time considering they went from an unknown planet near the Kree because it was a Kree outlying planet that they went to first to fight the Skrulls. They said it was like an outlier planet where the Kree are, all the way to they're hovering like right above Earth. So it had to be probably at very least, at least a few days.
Right. If not months. Yeah, it depends on their how fast they move about. But yeah, it had to have been a few days. But to us, it seems like Oh, okay.
It seemed
They
like
had an
5
hour.
minutes.
Yeah, they had maybe they had her an hour. Something like that. That was my other. And that was not a big issue. The biggest thing that I got hung up on was the Tesseract, and I also got hung up on, which I guess makes sense. But the other thing I got hung up on was how Nick Fury lost his eye, and his personality, because he did not have the Nick Fury personality.
It seems like a more innocent, trusting Nick Fury, who seemed like he was very ready to quit his job because nothing was happening, and then he sees his first alien as Carol Danvers and gets very excited.
Right. If you would think that he would have been at that point if he was, like he says when he talks about his history, he's like, "Oh, I was a soldier. I made it all the way up through colonel in the army," which maybe you did. I don't know, whatever. And then I became a professional spy. So by that time, he would have been pretty well hardened. But we see this jovial, kind of jokey
Right.
Men in Black.
Wasn't Nick Fury like really old? He just doesn't age the same. Because if I remember correctly, Nick Fury was like a pilot or something in World War I or World War II, maybe World War II.
I don't know what the evolution of Nick Fury is. I've never been a fan. I always thought Nick Fury was a white dude anyway. But anyway, I don't know what he is in the comics. I'm not a fan of him in the movies. This was the only time that I actually liked him. But he didn't fit the Nick Fury that we know.
No, it definitely seems like a more, somehow, even with everything that he's been through, a more innocent Nick Fury, as if everything he saw in his time before that, like as a spy and everything, didn't harden him.
Right, and you would think that it would have.
Right, because between Captain Marvel all the way up until Iron Man, which is set in our 2008, something happened to Nick Fury, and apparently it wasn't the Captain Marvel movie that we saw that made him a hardened person.
Right. Yeah, it was weird. You would have expected him to be hard by now, because you're not going to make colonel in the army in less than, let's say you get lucky and you make it in 15 years. I seriously doubt it. People go their entire career as officers and don't make full bird colonel. So he does that. He talks about how he was always fighting wars, and then he was a spy, and now he's a spy with SHIELD or whatever. So, man, you didn't get hardened by all of that. So what hardened you all of a sudden? And of course, the other thing I didn't like was there just wasn't enough Agent Coulson for me, because I got to have me some Agent Coulson, and they just didn't.
I definitely was hoping he'd be in it more.
He was not in it enough for me, not at all.
Probably cost them too much money to do the facial software on 2 people, and they're like, well, we'll just have to slim that down.
Yeah, that is extremely expensive, according to what we heard, where a good chunk of the budget went to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they basically CGI the whole face.
It's amazing. It's pretty amazing. Okay, so that was my big. I love that movie. I thought it was great. I thought it was a really good movie. But of course, yes, I was just fascinated by the whole the Captain Marvel. So I've kind of look at it and go, was your Captain Marvel my Captain Marvel, or is my Captain Marvel your Captain Marvel? Because I don't know. But this means that we've got Shazam coming out.
Yeah,
I think I'm going to enjoy Shazam a lot more.
Well, I think that they're going to do the right route. They're going to take the right route, because if you enjoyed the Captain Marvel comics, God dang it now, Shazam. If you enjoyed that, he was always kind of funny.
Yeah, he's a kid.
Yeah, so he's cool. I mean, he's supposed to have the wisdom of Solomon, and he's got the wizard who's guiding him and trying to be there for his sounding board or whatever. But yeah, he's a kid, and his big appeal, and I never really thought about this, but I guess I did, because I really liked Captain Marvel when I was a kid. But the big appeal to him was that he was a kid, and so when you think about comics, you're like, well, that could be me. I could be. So it was easier for you to read those and really fall into that adventure, as opposed to Superman.
A lot similar to how Spider-Man became popular, where anybody can be.
Right, anybody can wear the mask, anybody can be Spider-Man.
Yeah. The Shazam is really powers. It's.
Yep, we're blanking out on Skylar. Are you there?
Yeah, I sent him a message earlier. I don't know if he's seen it yet, suggesting that he change to continuous transmission rather than voice activated.
Oh, I haven't seen anything. Still hear me?
Yeah, you're fading. You
Yeah,
keep popping in and out. But yeah, you were saying about Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel's appeal in Spider-Man. But yeah, they can. I think that it was the big appeal of Captain Marvel was that he was a kid.
being in the right place at the right time, having the right physiology to react with the radioactive spider, stuff like that.
Oh, you mean Spider-Man?
Yeah, that's just one example. Sure.
Just one example. Yeah, right. Exactly. Right. We wouldn't hear about the story if somebody else got bit by it and didn't become Spider-Man. Well, he's got bit
They
by a
probably
spider.
would have died.
Right,
It would have
exactly.
been an obituary.
Possibly. So I'm excited though for the Shazam movie that's going to come out. I'm still going to think of him as Captain Marvel. And he's gone through some major reiterations or rebirths or reboots or whatever, just like they all do. I think you and I was talking about that with Doc before. I'm like, they reboot stuff all the time, and it's just depending on how the writer sees the storyline going. I'm sure they still have to propose it, but if you look at
Yeah,
say,
at one point, Captain Marvel was a cyborg, I think.
maybe I don't know.
Cannot confirm,
Yeah.
cannot deny.
I cannot confirm that, but there's been a cyborg Superman. I don't know about Captain Marvel.
Bizarro.
Well, that's a different dude altogether too. There's too many Supermen. Let's put it this way: there's too many Supermen out there, and let's just get rid of it. Let's just get rid of him. I was watching. Speaking of Superman, though, the big blue Boy Scout. I was watching the animated. I think it's like the Death of Superman, and it was.
Oh, the new one?
Yeah, it was the new one. It was pretty good, but what I thought was funny is that unless they put a line in that movie that unless you saw Christopher Reeve's Superman movie, you would just hear that line and not even think a thing about it. But because I grew up watching that movie and I watched that animated show, I was laughing. I'm like, wow, I wonder how many people actually got it when they did it. There's a line in the Superman movie where Christopher Reeves grabs Lois Lane. I don't remember, she was falling out of a helicopter or something like that, and he says to her, "I got you," and she says to him, "You got me. Who's got you?" And they say the exact line in the animated one, but it's the reverse. Lois Lane says that to Superman, says, "I got you," and he says, "You got me. Who's got you?" So it was kind of cool, but it was one of those funny things where like, oh, did they put that in there just to see who's paying attention from the old, stuff? Funny stuff like that. And I was telling Skylar the other day, you know how many times they use that line from that Uncle Ben says to Spider-Man in other movies?
With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. The dude in you remember that movie Teen Wolf?
Yeah, that was a great show.
Yeah, he says that to Michael J. Fox's dad says that to him at the breakfast table, right when the first time he was becoming a wolf. I was like, man, somebody might have to go back and sue for that one.
There's like at least 30 movies that use that line.
Yeah, lots of times. The funny part is in Into the Spider-Verse is Miles starts to say that to the Peter B. Parker. Peter B. And he's like, "Don't you say it." He's like, "Don't you dare say it." It was pretty good. Yeah. Anything else to? What about the alternate? Do you think Captain Marvel is in an alternate universe? Are they going to play that card?
Like the new Shazam movie?
Yeah.
It's always weird. It's really weird because in the Shazam trailers, they show Superman and Batman memorabilia in that world, and we haven't seen anything like that yet. Really cool.
Well,
I wonder if they're going to try and make Shazam like the Deadpool of the DC universe.
Oh God, no! Not
does
like a
fourth wall breaks and things
well,
like
not
that.
like. I mean, he's definitely not going to be the Deadpool. He's definitely no Deadpool.
Deadpool is awesome, by the way.
Well, Deadpool is
Quickly
awesome, but
becoming my favorite.
you
Marvel
definitely
character.
can't compare Deadpool to Captain Marvel, Shazam. You can't compare those two.
He's not the most powerful, but he's the funniest.
Oh, he's hilarious. But no, I guess I kind of see what you're saying. But if you look at the comics, right, how they did it before, and this is how it gets confusing, and that's probably how they're going to explain it, I assume, in the Shazam movie, when you're talking about, you see the comics of Superman and stuff like that. When they had Shazam before he met Superman, Superman didn't exist on Captain Marvel's Earth. Captain Marvel was on Earth S, I believe.
Okay.
And Superman only existed as a comic book hero in the comics there. Superman was on Earth 1. And
Right.
Captain Marvel was able to get to Superman. They were able to get to each other by Captain Marvel was able to go around the Rock of Eternity where the wizard lives. And that's how he got to Superman.
That's an interesting point because the only movies we've really had that show any of the world that these heroes live in, they don't really show the world at all. They show more of throwing them into the really tall buildings and knocking them down, or random pedestrians on the street. This one seems more getting involved with the people around Billy Batson's life. Kind of interesting. And they show one of the kids that he lives with has it's either a real or a model Batarang that Batman uses, Dawn of Justice, where he fights Superman. So it's this really interesting idea where you see him in trailers throwing this boy Batman at the bad guy as the signature "I'm Batman" line. So it'll be interesting to see if it is separate or the same. They seem to be treating it more like it's a media thing.
So maybe they are doing it where they integrated because eventually what they did was they integrated Captain Marvel into the real DC universe. So
right.
The same as on the same planet as Superman and Batman and all those things. So maybe that's what they're doing with this one. Maybe they're saying that they're going to tie him in with everything else.
It would probably make more sense than making a toy for children about a murderer.
Right.
Well, you've seen the TV series Flash?
Yeah.
Well, they introduced a character, the Vibe character there, who has the ability to travel between parallel universes. So between that and time travel, they have a pretty wide variety of ways to come up with different characters and playing or different Supermans, different Supergirls, different whatever.
Well, the Flash is fast enough. Well, the Flash is fast enough to run to an alternate universe, I think that's how he meets Supergirl the first time on the TV show.
Yeah, Supergirl and Flash are two different universes, and he travels through to hers, and that's how they meet.
Right. But incidentally, the Vibe Doc is actually one of the most powerful superheroes.
Yeah, he could strand your ass out in the middle of nowhere.
And he's also dead. Didn't they kill him off after 2 years? I think he's around Detroit too. By the way, in the comics.
I don't know. I don't think he's dead.
I think they killed him off pretty quick.
I've only seen Flash as far as Netflix has shown.
Oh, I'm talking about in the comics. He's a comic. He's a comic superhero. They didn't make him up for that show. Hello. But they got to kill him off because he's Latino or whatever. So.
Brown comic book heroes. That's what DC.
They call them brown comic book heroes?
Well, I mean, I don't know what they do behind the scenes.
Oh, well. Well, it's kind of like...
I hope they wouldn't cheese it up by being so blatant about their politically correct agendas.
Are you kidding? They probably do. They probably do. All right. Well, I guess we can wrap it up. It was a pretty good conversation. Do you want to come back, Skylar, when we have our next superhero movie, so you can give us the rundown and we can pull it apart?
Oh yeah, we definitely have to have another one after Shazam actually comes out.
I'm looking forward to Shazam. I'm hoping it's going to be good. I'm pretty excited. I'm wondering if the kid that's in the foster home with him, that's who has the hand crutch, I wonder if that's Freddy. Because if it is, then you can tell they're building the Marvel family, is what they're doing. Or I guess
it'll be interesting to see what they do with it, and if it's actually good or if they just cut the trailers very well.
Well, they've got a strong guy playing Shazam. He's a pretty decent actor. He did, what was it, Chuck? I never watched it. I watched I think I watched just clips of it. I never did watch it, so I might have to go back and revisit it. I know he's a pretty good actor, though.
Yeah, Zachary Levi is the guy that plays Shazam. He's a pretty good actor.
So I'm looking forward to it. So, how about you there, Doc? Anything to add other than you think Disney sucks?
Yeah, I do. Disney bad.
Disney bad. I'll give you Disney bad. All right, well then I guess that wraps it up for us. I'm the Beaveman saying thanks a lot for listening there, Beavemanites and Docutrons, or as I like to say, Doctards. Because if you're listening to Doc, then
just feeling the love over here.
That's what you are. All right, so until next time, it's the Beaveman saying adios, mooch fuckos.
Crickets, bitches.
Goodbye. Have a good day.